Coming in at move 7.
Yeah, we're coming in at move 7. Not too much has happened. It is the Catalan Opening, and it is quite a well-known variation of the Catalan. This is something that Magnus played during his World Championship match against Jan Nepomniachtchi. He prepared it specially for that match. I think pretty much all the world champions have played the Catalan Opening. Yeah, it's just so solid for white. It's very hard to get active as black. It's very hard to create winning chances as black, and I think that favours Carlsen. If we talk about styles, Firouzja wants to be active. It's very hard to do that against this opening. However, Firouzja has gone greedy and grabbed a pawn. So temporarily in the current position that we're looking at, black is a pawn up. And Magnus, he ends up choosing one of the older main moves, this bishop coming out. There are many options on this last move for white. Firouzja defends the pin. And this is just a very solid pawn push. White's getting ready to move his queen to the square that this pawn previously sat on. White's rook next to his king will slide across. White's going to try and play in the center. He's not necessarily going to try and win that black extra pawn on c4 anytime soon. He's just getting his pieces ready, and this is still theory as far as I know.
Yep.
Opening theory.
It is still very much theory. Last game that was played was actually played between two female players, Vantika against Kosteniuk. And that was a win for Kosteniuk. But that was, if I know, it was a rapid blitz match.
And Kosteniuk was which colour in that game?
She was black.
OK, so a win for black in that game. Now the dark squared bishops are coming off the board. Black recaptures with his knight.
And we do have a draw in game 3. Prague, Duda. That means Prague in 10 minutes. Game 4, black pieces, has to win that game to take it to tie breaks. He can most hope for 2 points today, Prague. He cannot take all 3 points. Duda on fire, winning against Magnus yesterday. A favourite now to win his match against Prague.
Is anyone else kind of hoping that Hans... I mean, Hans is down to the last game now.
Yeah.
They're 1.5 all against Aronian. I'm kind of hoping that, you know, Hans gets something, you know, from today's, because, you know, it's not just about his character, but he's been playing some great chess.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he's been winning a lot of games, but losing the matches. So he deserves to be able to afford to pay that Uber food bill, definitely. He needs that money. He needs to get his lobster in tonight. Come on, Hans, just draw it.
Yeah. And take it to tie breaks. Oh, blitz with Hans Niemann, that must be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It would be nice actually to see Hans get off the scoreboard, because
absolutely,
like Simon said, you know, his play is so much better than the score, and it's just somehow it's kind of unfortunate result of the kind of match situation. Things haven't been going his way, and Magnus jumping in with his knight. And, well, Firouzja playing very quickly, which suggests that he's still within his preparation and defending the pawn, and Magnus challenging that pawn on c4.
Yeah, so now it's a proper pawn sacrifice. Magnus doesn't want to regain his pawn. He's happy after this pawn exchange to just play the position. And I guess black will castle, black will try to get developed. The compensation that Magnus will have as white is firstly white's light squared bishop, just a fantastic piece. Also some dark square holes in the black camp, especially the c5 square, maybe ripe for a white knight later on. But this is ambitious. I was going to say as well, the Catalan opening, it's a very good choice in general. It's just one of the best openings out there. But Magnus will know that Firouzja will have prepared hundreds of hours for this in preparation for the candidates tournament. So you're kind of playing into an area that your opponent can predict. But it is objectively a correct opening, so it's kind of, yes, that kind of way up.
And I have an interesting point, actually. In my database, I have a game from 2017 between Magsud Lulu against Alireza Firouzja. So maybe Magnus is aware of that game. In that particular game, Firouzja actually picked up the c-pawn and challenged the centre by playing c5.
OK, his mouse, if we're looking at Firouzja's screen right now, his mouse, his cursor was hovering over that c5 square. Normally, though, you would pick up the pawn and drag it to that square, so maybe that doesn't indicate that he's going to play that move. How did that game end up, Jovanka?
Ended in a draw.
Okay.
Who's with the white piece? Magsud?
Magsud Lulu. I can't pronounce his name. Sudlu. Magsudlu.
You don't want me to try pronouncing because it would be horrendous, but...
Farham, yeah, great guy, fantastic player.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the Iranian #1, now that Firouzja has moved from Iran to France.
Very strong, but yeah, I struggle a lot with pronouncing any names, but especially that one. But I have to say, the Catalan Opening, I mean, the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking, I've got to learn this. You know, I've got to play the Catalan, because, you know, it just seems like you often sack a pawn, you often get compensation. That's right up my street. It's very fashionable now. What's the best way of learning it? I mean, Chessable must have a course on it. Do you guys know? I don't know which course they got.
Yeah,
but
they have a course. I think it's...
By an Indian grandmaster.
It is an Indian grandmaster. I want to say Sathiraman, but
It might be
might not be.
Right, I'll have to look it up. Yeah. Okay, well that's I'll look that up later. So Chessable course on the Catalan. I need to go and get that course after this. So definitely.
Yeah, it's an interesting game, this one. And game 3 with Duda and Prag ended in a draw. Let's hear from the two players after that game.
Prag gave us a draw in this game. How would you summarize?
I think I had great chances in this game, but I just missed it at some point.
What is your feeling before the last one?
Not great, but I'll try my best.
Good luck, Prag.
Yeah.
It's been a very interesting day today, Jan-Krzysztof. You've had especially chances in the second game. How did you feel after that one?
Yeah, it's too interesting, to be honest. No, I mean, the second game was a disaster. I kind of black out at the end, and also I think I was winning by force earlier on, but even this queen endgame is completely winning. The thing is, I just was missing a lot of stuff, like a lot of checks, and at the very end I put the queen on the g file, which was completely stupid, but I was afraid because I was earlier on giving some random checks and I was afraid not to blunder free call. So yeah, I mean, it was a disaster, yeah, because otherwise the match would be almost over. But in this game I was worse. But after f5, I had a feeling it's going to be okay, because I was getting some activity and it wasn't trivial for him to convert.
You've been playing very good in the start of your matches. Now you need a draw in the last one. Based on previous experience, will you try to play a little more aggressive now?
I think he will play aggressively, so I will just, hopefully cope with that.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Bad experience for Duda yesterday. He won the first 2 games against Magnus and then lost the 2 next ones. So it went to tie breaks, where he eventually did win. And Magnus here, he is fighting in game 4 to win this match and take all 3 points. The bar is now slightly over to his side.
Yeah, and for Magnus fans, that's generally a positive. Magnus is, after all, a pawn down, and if the evaluation bar thinks that you're doing quite well despite being a pawn down, it tends to mean you have a pretty good position. And Magnus just improving his queen there. I just like the control that he has on the position. So despite Black's extra pawn, Black's position full of holes, remember? Maybe we can jump in just to show what the plans might be for either side over the coming moves. So the main compensation White has for the pawn is that he has a beautiful outpost for his knight. And he could use this over the next couple of moves. For example, if Black takes a timeout, the White knight might jump in, attacking this bishop, keeping an eye on this pawn in the corner. I just don't see how Black is ever really going to challenge this piece. Also, White does have this kind of majority in the center. At some point, you might consider pushing forward. You don't want to rush this. Your position might become a bit loose. But later on, you have the kind of lever, the key to open up the center, kicking away Black's knight. Firouzja now brings his queen across just to defend his bishop. There was, after all, a pin along this diagonal. And Magnus, I'm expecting him over the next few moves to bring his rook across, line it up with a black queen, maybe jump his knight in. Okay, he jumps in immediately. And yeah, it's just strategic compensation long term. Black's extra pawn is this one, after all, and it's not easy to push even the square in front of it. This a5 square is controlled by White. And there we go. The bishop moves, and Magnus says, I'm going to create some pressure. This just looks so beautiful for White. If White had an extra pawn, well, if White wasn't a pawn down, then you would say strategically winning for White. It's just Black having that one pawn to cling on to. Is that enough? What do you guys think? Would you take the pawn, or would you take the position, essentially?
I would take the position. I mean, this looks like a great game for White. You know, such natural moves, such pressure. I mean, what is Black going to do? I mean, Black doesn't even have an active plan. And if Black is just simply reduced to, like, twiddling around with the pieces, making small moves here and there, it just feels like White has the luxury of just building. And that's so difficult.
I guess Black could maybe play for bringing his rook to the centre, eventually breaking out with this pawn. Black could maybe aim to, at some point, move this knight out the way. I'm not sure whether you can do it safely right now. For example, move it out the way, try to trade off these bishops. If Black can exchange off a few pieces, maybe at some point try and trade off this knight as well. Some hope for Black, but it feels very loose. It is a Magnus type of position as well, especially kind of post-2019 Magnus, who likes to sacrifice pawns here and there. Yeah, inspired by Daniel Dubov, of course. Magnus loves to give up those pawns as kind of dominance positionally. Yeah, it's tough to call.
Yeah, I think Firouzja won't be very happy either. I mean, we're talking about Magnus and all his side, but you've got to think Firouzja, I mean, he likes having the initiative, right? And here, he's got to defend. And I don't think he really, that's an area of his game he's not as keen on, being a pawn up and defending. He'd much rather be on the white side of this. I mean, it's not terrible yet. You do have the extra pawn, and if something goes wrong, that extra pawn will count later on. And I expect a lot of players would take the black side here, but practically speaking, it's just easier for white to play this position, and that's a big bonus. And we now see this rook d8 move, Black potentially trying to get active, right, with that pawn break in the middle after that move.
Whoops, not two squares, just one square. And yeah, it's always uncomfortable for the opponent if your rook stares down at a queen. Here we have this standoff between the black rook and the white queen. Still some stuff in between, but likewise, the white rook and the black queen. Both sides feeling a bit uncomfortable. I wouldn't be surprised if Magnus here just moves this piece out of the way, just to prevent any tricks.
Magnus thinking now for 30 seconds. This is a massive game in the tournament. If Magnus wins this game, it's so likely he will win the tournament, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially if Pragg doesn't make that comeback, Magnus will... Wait, could he win it here? He could win it now in this game, right? He's 1 point ahead of Pragg. If he gets 3 points for the match win, he'll be 4 points ahead if Pragg loses. And there we go. Magnus could win the tournament in this round.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Alireza Firouzja will be 5.
Yeah, I mean, it was so bunched up, it was so close, we didn't even consider this.
No, that's true.
Especially after he lost the first game, Magnus Carlsen. But yeah, he could start the party early with a win in this game.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's looking quite possible. I mean, we'll have to kind of keep an eye on Pragg's game as well, won't we? Just to see how that goes, because Pragg needs to get a win to, you know, keep in touch with Magnus at the moment.
Yeah. Talking of a Magnus win, though, I don't really like this decision he's gone for. He's trading off a bunch of minor pieces, and black was a bit cramped. So normally when you have more space, if your opponent's struggling to kind of find squares for their pieces, exchanging things off, not necessarily a good idea. Now black's extra pawn might become a factor. Yeah, I'm not so sure about what Magnus is doing, to be honest. I mean, it still looks very nice, very pleasant, not in trouble with white, of course, but in terms of trying to win, black, I think Firouzja will be very happy that he's managed to make those exchanges, especially the light squared bishops. So the tension might go on. We might not see Magnus win the tournament in this game.
Yeah, for the excitement in the tournament, we are actually now hoping Magnus Carlsen will not win this game, but how impressive it will be if he does and takes all 3 points in this match and takes the tournament victory. Wow. Impressive stuff. It is Alireza Firouzja. Thinking now, let's go back to Miami. So many fans in the building there today.
Guys, we're outside the playing arena, and as you can see, it's not just chess inside, but even right here, we've got games on. Our spectators are having a fun time here, and we're joined by a very special guest. It's Women Grandmaster Yanyat, who's joining us. Hey.
Hello, how are you, everybody?
Yanyat, it's so nice to have you here with us. Now, Yanyat is from Miami, and she runs a chess club. Tell us a bit about the chess scene in Miami.
Okay, we try to have more people playing chess, and I like to, all the kids try to learn chess because it's really good for our kids. Then it's my goal to grow up the chess in Miami. And then this tournament is a really, really nice marketing for chess here.
I was actually going to ask you, what does it mean to have all these top players here? How inspiring is it for the kids at the club?
Oh my God, this is a good inspiration for us, and have this big tournament here with all the players is like a party, like a big chess party here.
Thank you so much, Yaniat. Indeed, it is a celebration of chess here in Miami this weekend.
Fantastic. Maybe the next World Chess Champion, maybe not the next, but a future World Chess Champion will be from Miami. We also yesterday talked about the Critical Thinking movie based on a Miami high school chess team. So chess is big in Miami, and Magnus Carlsen is right now fighting not only to win the game and the match, also the tournament if he wins this game and Pragg does not win the game that just started for him against Duda, game 4. It's trouble for Hans Niemann as well. He is tied with Levon Aronian before game 4, and the bar just shot up for Levon in this game 4. We are hoping Niemann will stack up some points. He is still on 0 points, but it's looking hard right now. Levon, what a player, such a strong American player.
Yeah. It's looking bad for Hans Niemann. And here Magnus is doing Magnus things. So, you know, just improving.
Doing Simon things.
So, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Alireza Firouzja doing Simon things.
Yeah.
What, losing?
No, I was thinking about Harry.
Yeah, little use of Harry there. So,
Yeah. No, I just like the way that Magnus is just relocating his pieces just to apply pressure to a different point, the A6 pawn. And it's so nice to see Tanya in Miami with all the support. And we are asking everyone at home, you know, for our selfie competition, how are you cheering for your favourite player? And Ahmed said, well, they're cheering from Budapest. And take a look at this. There's a lot of chess fans in Budapest. And there we go.
How
A big
cool.
hello to you, Ahmed. And
It's like a watch party.
I know, it's super cool. And Thomas Lehman says, go Magnus! Amazing games, and sends us all the best wishes. And yeah, thank you everyone for sending in your selfies, and keep them coming. Show us how you're cheering for your favourite player, and remember to tweet us using the hashtag ChessChamps.
Yeah, and especially if it's Firouzja or Pragg, they need the energy from around the world right now. Magnus Carlsen, if he wins this game, he'll win the tournament if Pragg does not win his next game. Drama happening in Miami.
Yeah, and Jovanka, you mentioned that phrase, Magnus things, and this is kind of classic Magnus. He's just regained his pawn now. It's level material again after White recaptures this rook. He's going into an endgame where he has a strategic advantage, where there's pretty much no risk. I mean, is Firouzja just going to lose a pawn? That white knight is just beautiful. The black knight looking pretty good as well, but having less influence. Firouzja needs something active and something soon, because otherwise he's just going to walk into this bind where Magnus is just going to turn the screw, torture him forever. Also, look at the clock times, 5.5 extra minutes for Magnus right now. Despite the evaluation bar, it just feels like it's all gone in White's favour. The last few moves, the whole game so far. How can Black fight back? We can't give up hope for Firouzja. Firouzja as well, he'll be looking for positives in his position. It just feels like he's been outmaneuvered. He lost his pawn back.
I guess the big issue is, do you suffer and just take the queen, or should you try to break out and move the queen and hope for some more active adventures further along down the line?
Yeah.
But okay, he's gone for the queen trade. And it does feel like Magnus can simply now start to grind. And I'm going to hand it over to our chief. I was going to say grinder.
Yeah, a grindmaster. That's my
Grindmaster.
favourite title.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's just that type of position where White can sit on it forever. There's zero risk. When you talk about grinding an endgame, you want to remove all the risk from the position. You want to improve your pieces step by step. Magnus has a pretty good knight right now. It doesn't need to retreat it yet. It has a nice outpost later. White's rook perfect. The king is the piece that's first to be improved. Black's king, I guess, is going to do the same, going to centralize itself. And then it's just about when to kind of pull the trigger, when to start advancing White's pawns. Maybe on the right side of the board just to gain a bit of space for the endgame. Maybe you kick back Black's knight in the center with a pawn. It's just kind of step by steps, all these small mini plans. We filmed one video, myself and Magnus, about accumulating small advantages. And here he's accumulated a few advantages already. Better pawn structure with White, especially in the center of the board. He's got a better minor piece, a better rook. And he just needs something a bit more concrete now. So whether that's
the way
pushing pawns or whether it's tactics, we'll see.
I mean, the way you've described it, David, I mean, if I had this position against you with the black pieces, you know what I'd do?
Sorry, Simon.
I'd resign. So, I mean, OK, it's not that bad, but it is pretty grim. And I think everything you mentioned there makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's that idea of creating two weaknesses, though, which I think is very important if people are looking at this position and they're thinking, how do I actually improve this? Well, you want to tie your opponent down to one weakness. I think it's quite clear what that is. It's this backwards pawn there. Then you want to try to create another weakness somewhere else. I mean, black is kind of threatening to guard that weakness at the moment. But, OK, you can see Magnus now trying to create, you know, a weakness somewhere else. And he can move his knight now to keep that pawn tied down. And then I love your idea of trying to advance on the king side. That's where you want to get the second weakness, I feel. Use your pawns to create some weaknesses. Once you've got the two weaknesses, your opponent becomes... Well, their defences are too stretched, right? So this seems like a very, very nice way to play. And I really don't... I think Magnus has got very good chances of winning this. Really good chances.
Especially with 5 extra minutes on the clock, especially because Firouzja hates these types of positions in general. As Magnus, I would probably just move the white king to the side and then decide which one to push. I mean, in an ideal world, this girl gang, the mean girls here, will have 5 members. And, for example, here you could start pushing everything forward and then decide later what to do with them. I'm not sure what these pawns are doing, but they look nice at least. And this is the type of thing where you just don't want to commit yet. You want to grind. You want to kind of make your opponent crack under the pressure. And it's just difficult. For example, in a position like this, it's difficult for black to activate his rook. You can't really activate it now because white just steps back and will win a pawn. If you defend this pawn with your king, you're always walking into potential checks later on. White will save this one for later. This square as well, not safe. This is a beautiful outpost for white's knight anyway. White would love to occupy the open file with his rook later. And yeah, if black is stuck for plans, why not just kind of shuffle the king across, protect your pawn in the center of the board. Yeah, another idea that I wouldn't be surprised from Magnus would be to kind of push one of these pawns, but it's not clear yet which one you want to push and in what order.
I mean, the position actually, the way that you've kind of made it seems like it's quite desperate for black. Mm-hmm. Is now the time, if black were to get, OK, so he retreats the knight to attack the pawn, the king has to move over. I mean, is black looking at making, like, desperado moves, like pushing the F pawn forward, just to challenge in the centre, just to give the knight something to do? Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, that's why, not right now anymore, but I would have loved to put the king on this square, partly to defend this pawn, which is undefended, but also just to be able to kind of maintain the integrity of white's central pawns. But Magnus, he's being a bit more direct. This is where we had some kind of back and forth debates in our Grind Like a Grandmaster course about when to go for it, whether to be really direct if you have the option. Magnus dropped his knight back and gave a check to the black king, forcing the black king back. And
would you say Magnus is more direct than you, David?
Yes.
Obviously, after doing that course with him.
Yeah,
must have been very interesting, you know, to work with a world champion on anything. But you're more patient build-up than Magnus. I mean,
definitely. And
right, it's interesting that. Just like, you know, fine. Do you think? I mean,
he's a more universal player than me. I think simply he's much more confident when kind of attacking, taking risks, because he trusts his calculation maybe a bit more than I do.
Yeah.
So even if he goes forward, even if it doesn't work, he'll kind of regroup, he'll step back, and then he'll try and grind again.
Right, interesting.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
it's always, every player has different kind of preferences, right? And he did mention in a few games we analysed there that I was a bit too patient occasionally.
Right, a bit too sadistic.
Yeah, so. But I'm expecting Magnus at some point either to bring his rook to the open file or to centralise his king, just improve all his pieces, and still uphill struggle for Firouzja.
Meanwhile, the bar inching towards Pragnananda's side in Game 4 against Duda. Prag, he has to win that game to take it to tiebreaks. Magnus currently thinking, and we're going to go back down to Miami. Chess going on inside the arena, and I guess also outside, Sverre.
It's not only in front of the computer screens that our chess players are really, really impressing. Tanya Sachdev, she's fresh off a Olympiad medal, and now she's playing 10 boards at the same time with simulation chess here. It's just getting started, I can see here, and I'm going to ask one of the players here, how do you feel you're doing against Tanya so far?
I think I'm doing really good. This is just a beginning, but let's see.
And Tanya, she is definitely trying to keep her focus here, while at the same time hearing that I'm talking about her. So we shall see. It's the birthday woman, Tanya Sachdev, playing against half the room right now.
Go Tanya, that's intense, playing that many games at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I've never celebrated my birthday, let's say, by playing that much chess. But yeah, Tanya, she's been in great form lately, both at the board and in the commentary, of course. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be an honour for those players to play against her. She'll hope for some birthday gifts, though.
Yeah.
She'll want to win those games. I know Tanya, she's a...
Competitive.
She's a winner.
Yeah. What is the biggest number of simultaneous games you've ever played?
Oh, I once played around 60, but it took...
60?
It took hours and hours, yeah. I think, in general, you want to play about 20-something at the same time, but I took part in this kind of record attempt to play... it was a bunch of Grandmasters, I think 10 of us, and we were all playing as many games as possible. I think it took me 4.5 hours or something.
Oh, whoa.
And I did lose a few, so...
Well, no wonder.
It's tiring, yeah.
That's intense. And what's going on in the arena as well? It's tense. Alireza, is he now fighting for his life in this game, or what's the situation for him?
Yeah, as Simon mentioned as well, Black is solid enough for now. He only does have that one big weakness on the c6 square, and also he does have ideas of trading off pieces. And, okay, what's happening here? Magnus has just traded off a set of knights. Firouzja is indeed fighting for his life, but if he fights successfully over the next few moves, he could just eliminate all the danger immediately. And, okay, Magnus looked up, and he's reacting, frowning. He's surprised by this. If it's possible, if all the rooks disappear and that endgame is a draw, then Firouzja has just worked out everything perfectly, but it's a big gamble. King and pawn endgames, assuming the rooks get traded off now, king and pawn endgames are the hardest endgame in chess. And, okay, white's pawn's on the king side. It's all about this right side of the board now, whether Magnus can break through there. If he can, he's winning. But it's so hard to judge. I mean, this is partly calculation, partly just instinct. Magnus thinks it's winning, judging by his facial expression. And, okay, white's king can't break through on this left side of the board. That left side is going to get completely blocked anytime soon. So the king goes the other way. And Firouzja, I would hate this position as Black. It's a two-result game. It can only be a white win or a draw. But Firouzja, he's going to have to find the perfect setup for Black in order to draw this one. Just judging by the evaluation bar, it should be a draw with best play, but Black is cramped. If you look in the center on the E file, white has a bit more space with his pawn there, meaning that he has the advantage in this endgame. But this is one of the ones that we can work out. There's a definite objective result here if both players play perfectly, which is a draw, but objective, kind of in practical terms, so difficult, so unpleasant to defend.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with all that lack of space and working out how many extra pawn moves white has. Ooh, anxious stuff here in the between Magnus and Firouzja.
We do have Mahdi cheering for Alireza Firouzja. He's going to need it because he is fighting for his life in this game and in the match. If this is a draw, we will see blitz tiebreaks between Magnus and Alireza Firouzja, and I think the whole world is hoping for that. These two amazing blitz players.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping for it to go to Armageddon.
I agree.
Because then I don't know. I honestly don't know who's going to win. You know, I guess the player who has the white pieces, who has the extra time, is just going to nail it. But who knows?
And meanwhile, Black has 5 minutes here, and it's a crucial decision for Firouzja. Does he allow the white king to continue stepping into the up the board into the black half, or does he prevent that? You've got to be really careful how you commit your pawns in these endgames. He just keeps the tension, just moves the black king across. And now, if I were Magnus, I would be moving that white king to the edge of the board. Doesn't look great, but at least once the king is there, you can throw pawns forward. You're more flexible. I'm just worried that if white's king doesn't take the opportunity to step forward now, it might not get a second chance.
So it's now or never.
Might be a draw anyway, but we'll see. Magnus, how does he want to win this endgame? One thing that surprises me is that Magnus frowned so much and then kind of was shocked, but it does look like it should be a draw. I mean, Black doesn't have any weaknesses, despite white's extra space in the middle of the board.
Is it a sign Magnus is feeling confident in the game, that facial reaction?
Either that, or maybe he just assumed that this was a win and kind of wrote it off, and now he's having to calculate. He's realising it's not so simple. Simon, you have thoughts here?
Maybe you should have been more patient, David.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you got that to teach Magnus, you know, from the course. It's not just Magnus teaching you. Maybe, you know, if he'd have just taken his time a little bit more, he could have had the second weakness on the king side already. I mean, of course, he's pushing for the win here with his active king, more space, and the pawn breaks, but black is very solid. Black probably should be holding this one. We're also hearing, you know, just to give you an update on the other big match, which is going to, you know, if this is a draw and Prag wins, for example, well, that's going to lead to probably the most exciting match tomorrow, right? And it seems like Prag is a little bit better in his game, but...
The bar on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the way on Prag's side, black's side.
Which is probably a good sign for the entertainment of, you know, leaving it to the last day. We kind of all want it on the last day, really.
Absolutely.
Don't we? Last day.
I mean, if Prag just wins this game, he gets at least 1 point. He will have a chance tomorrow against Magnus.
Yep.
I mean, if he beats Magnus, even if Magnus wins this game, he'll catch up. If Magnus doesn't win this game, Prag wins tomorrow against Magnus, he'll leapfrog him, win the tournament. What a big game this is. I looked over as well. Duda's playing some weird stuff, so Prag punishing him.
Yep. Oh, which is good for the tournament, I think. Very
I
good.
see 2 tie breaks.
Oof.
Oh.
Be here all night, guys.
What do you think?
Yep.
If there was a tie break between Pragnananda and Duda.
Well, I'm thinking it's a great way to spend Saturday, you know, tie breaking up. So I think that, I mean, to be honest, the energy seems to be with Prag after he held that ending. You know, it seems to be on his side a little bit, and yeah. I mean, I just can't wait till tomorrow as well. Prag versus Magnus. Everyone, remember, that is the big one tomorrow. Yeah. Make sure you all come and watch that. It's going to be fantastic.
Set your alarms, yeah?
I mean, if Prag wins that and wins the whole thing, I mean, that'll be news around the world, won't it, in the chess community?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be
yeah.
ginormous.
Beyond, I mean, in India, he's already a celebrity, he's already a hero, but that'll be massive.
And if Firouzja wins this encounter, say in the tie breaks, because I don't think he's going to do it here at all, then it will be anyone's game.
Yeah, if he wins the tiebreaks, he will be tied. No, Magnus will be up by 1 point only.
Yeah.
To Alireza Firouzja. Wow, what a finish it's going to be. We have to admit we're kind of hoping Magnus won't win this game, just for the excitement in the tournament on that final day. But of course, the best man has to win.
Yeah, and meanwhile, heartbreak for Niemann fans. He has fallen to defeat, so still not off the scoreboard. Aronian just played a great game now.
You got to feel for him, haven't you? Because he just he's so close. He wins the first game.
He's a great player, Niemann. He's going to be one of the best in the world. It's just a tough week.
Yeah, it's really sad, and he's not cashing in at the moment. So maybe one of the other guys can buy Uber Eats today, you know. And well, I mean, I think Black is holding this now pretty well. I don't see White. The only way White's going to win this is if he creates a way in for his king. You can't win this unless you get your king into the position, or maybe get a passed pawn. But I just can't see any way that White can do this. So he's trying a pawn push. He's trying to make some weaknesses in Black's position, but I think Black is so far remaining very solid at the moment.
I mean, but if Black just simply blocks it off by making this move, there's no way in.
Dead draw.
Dead draw.
Total.
Yeah, dead draw.
White's king will never ever step beyond the 4th rank now. No matter what you do, if you capture a pawn, you step your white pawn forward, it's just all blocked. I just have a feeling Magnus, when the rooks came off, he assumed that the white king could go to the left side of the board and break in there, but maybe he just forgot that this pawn structure now that we see on the left completely shuts it down. So even if the white king does a journey, that left side is blocked. I just have a feeling he assumed he could get through on that flank. But here we go. We will see a draw any moment now. The position is going to be completely blocked. Nothing else to play for. The kings can't get through.
And this is the Lego move I was talking about. When someone pushes their pawn, you move their pawn next to it. So, yeah, I mean, this is, You
can play for 100 moves here, but it's going to be a draw anyway. And there we go. Tie breaks.
It's a draw. Yay! We will see blitz tie breaks between these two speed demons, Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja. That will start 5 minutes after The final game in round 4 is finished, and that game is Prague against Duda. First of all, we're gonna